Welcome to the Diamond Hands podcast, where medicine meets momentum and branding becomes a leadership system. I'm Tracey co-founder of Diamond Hands Media. I build aesthetic brands that lead, with a background in employee benefits and business finance, so brand becomes authority and asset value. This is mindset, money, and marketing for founders building brands that run without them. Because brand isn't a logo, it's how you lead. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Diamond Hands podcast. Today, we are so excited to have Paulina Riedler with us. She is the founder and CEO of Spkinect. And this is a telehealth good faith exam company for practices all around the country. Welcome.
Thank you, Leslie, for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here with you.
I'm so happy you're here too. It's like, guys, her and I actually connected. It was on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I think a year ago now. Oh, yeah,
Probably.
exactly. So we've just been kind of like rocking and rolling, and we talked because I was like, I'm so surprised I haven't ran into you at any of the conferences or any of the things. And so we're like, I was like, I need to have you on the podcast. So yeah, thanks for being here. So
I think we've been like ships passing in the night, right?
Exactly. And I feel like that happens to certain people. And then when I meet them, I'm like, wow, you're so cool. This should have happened before. So I just want to kind of like jump right into it too, So basically, Paulina, I want to know, what's the story behind, Spkinect, and where were you when this idea for telehealth, telemedicine, good faith exams, remote, when did that hit you?
Yeah. So it's a funny story, actually. My husband and I were reading an article from the Ventura County Star. This is a small local newspaper up in Ventura County, which is where my husband is from. And at the time, he was running a telehealth platform for a different industry. And so we read this article. And in the article, this was 2011. It was about a nurse, an RN, who was arrested in Fresno. Unfortunately, she was doing what a lot of RNs were doing at that time, which was they were trained in Botox, but they didn't have a physician or a nurse practitioner doing the good faith exams. So they were essentially practicing medicine without a license, is how the board looked at that. The nurse injector was going to patients' houses and doing, at-home treatments, Botox parties, and there was a complaint filed, either we don't know, by a patient or a competitor. And the board investigated, sent in an undercover investigator, found out that this RN was prescribing Botox, which is practicing medicine without a license because it's outside of her scope. And so they did really make this case about it. I think just because they wanted to scare a lot of people into saying, hey, we're no longer going to tolerate this. We know what's going on. We want to make sure that people are practicing compliantly and safely. And so that really brought to light one question for me, which was, well, I was a nurse. I am a nurse. But at that time, I had just finished nursing school. So I was thinking, I don't want to lose my license. It's very scary to think of, getting arrested on criminal charges. So I started to look a little bit more into the aesthetic industry. And I found, by talking to a physician who owned a couple of locations in San Diego, and he taught me that the reason that a lot of these RNs were operating this way is just it's really hard to get those good faith exams done because either they would have to bring the physician with them to these, people's houses, which is very costly. And that just didn't work out. And so they were kind of doing this, under the rug, so to speak. And also there was a much, at that time, 2010, 2011, aesthetics wasn't really talked about as a facet of medicine yet. It wasn't really being recognized that much. It was starting to. And in California, they really weren't explicit guidelines around who could do what. And so I just found that there was this need, and how could we bridge that gap? And it was actually, my husband and I talking, and he said, look, we have this telehealth platform already. What if we just tried and see if this could work for aesthetics? So we used a friend of ours who had some med spas and asked if he would be interested in using our service. I went on Craigslist and found a nurse practitioner who was retired, but she was bored and she was looking for work. Yeah. And her name is Gina Maslow, and I will love her till the day I die. She is such a dear friend of ours now. but she was just looking for extra work. So we taught her how to use Skype, and this is what we used in the beginning, and that's how we got our first couple of clients.
My God, I love that. And going even deeper in that, like even your process, just like validating the market, right? It's like, there's a lot of new people who are like, oh my goodness, how do I get my first few clients or what have you? And you were like, I have this friend,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, it's kind of an in. I think it helps if you have an in, and you can always kind of, that is the hard part too, is getting that first client, right? Getting that first customer. Um, at least the first paying one, because you can get people to say, "Hey, use this for free and give me your feedback," which is always great too in the beginning. But, getting your first paying customer, that's a really big deal. And for us, it had to come. It came through getting people to use the system first, use the process first, and give us their feedback until we figured out, actually, I think this is something that we can sell to other practices. And so the beginning is a lot. There was a lot of, I say, an uphill battle, because there was a lot of misconception, and we'll probably talk about that around, what is a good faith exam? Is it really needed? At that time, it wasn't really being talked about in the industry at all. And so we did have this article, and the news story about this nurse on our side, because we really, were able to sort of ride on the coattails of that and say, look, you don't want this to happen to you. And here's something that you can offer, that you can utilize, that is cost effective. You don't have to hire a nurse practitioner or a PA, or try to get your doctor to come along with you, or be in clinic when you're seeing patients. You can use a service like ours and just pay us for the time that we're seeing patients for you, which is much more cost effective.
Yes. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And, for you, what was the moment when you and your husband, I love that you guys are a part of a husband and wife team or have
Mhm.
you, I share that. My husband and I are in Diamond Hands Media, but for you guys, it was like, when were you like, wow, this is making money? Like, we're good. Like, we're going to continue
Yeah.
going with this. Like, what's
Yes.
the aha moment for you? You're
Mhm.
like, this is real.
Yeah, I love that question. First of all, I just have to say, I've never been asked that question, but I love it so much, because as an entrepreneur, we all have an answer to that question, right? And for us, it really came, believe it or not, 7 years in. We did this for a long time, not knowing if it was going to become something bigger. I never started this with the ambition that we would get to where we are today, that it would be the thing that, sustains our family and our livelihood and employs, 35 plus people. I didn't think that. But we had a good model that was working, and it was sustainable, just him and I managing it. And we got to the point where we had a business partner, actually, who wanted us to open up some weight loss centers around 2016, 2017. They were kind of, HCG was a big thing. So they said,
Yeah, I
let's
remember.
open these weight loss centers. And they said, just stop doing Spkinect. It's never going to pay your bills. It's never going to make you any money. This is where you need to be at. And we ended up starting one with him, and less than 18 months later, we closed that location down. So thank God we didn't give up on Spkinect in the meantime. And Spkinect does pay our bills, by the way, now. So I like to say that. But yeah, it really was about 7 years into where I left my nursing career, and really went full time into this. And when we did that, I always say it was like, actually, one of our team members, her name's Tabitha. She says, you were like the catalyst. So once I left my full time job and went all in with both feet, and then him and I really got to work together, because we are very much a yin and yang and have very opposite strengths and weaknesses. It just like it exploded, and we just saw all this potential and momentum, and that's when we knew this is it.
Wow, and I really enjoy that yin and yang type of energy, right? Because I think what some of the challenges that practice owners have is that they don't have their yin. They don't, or their
Mhm.
yang, we're
Yes.
all yin trying to
Yes.
do everything in that yin
Uh-huh.
energy. And it's like, where's your damn yang?
Yes,
Right. And that's just like,
exactly.
and sometimes what happens, we do have bias toward hiring people who are very similar to ourselves. Right. And so if you're a yin and you need a yang, but you're hiring all yings,
Mhm.
whoo,
Yes.
it's not great, but it's great that you had that kind of partner who can offset your strengths, you get your
Yes.
strengths, weaknesses, and back and forth or whatever. And I
Yes.
think so many practice owners, that's what they need. So it's like if you're a person who's intense and you're like a control freak, your practice manager probably needs to be more of a visionary, a little bit more
Yes.
chill or whatever, or everyone's gonna cry.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. And you need to have somebody that, if it's not someone that you're married to or related to or whatever, you've got to be able to have the communication
yes.
that will lend itself to that balance. So, right, like exactly like you said, right? If you are really a control freak, then you need a partner who is going to be able to level set you and be able to cut through the BS and also be able to maybe hear you so you can vent and say, rah, 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 like this is not right, this is this, and they can sort of be the filter, like I say. That's how my head of operations, she's the filter for us. I could just go and like, why is this like this? And this is wrong. And this is messed up. And I don't like this. And then she filters it down. She's like, so she's my therapist, right? What I hear you saying is, I need to, fix this and I'll take care of that. And she communicates that in a much nicer way. But it's just like without having that yin and yang, without having that balance, one,
Yeah.
it's really lonely.
Yeah.
Okay, it's super lonely. It's already lonely, and yes, I have my husband, but it still can be lonely. And so doing it without a partner, I think is incredibly hard. I give kudos to the people who have done it really successfully because I don't know that I would want to do it without a partner at this point. That's kind of the fun of it for me is building something together.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, no, and I'm right there in the same wavelength with you. Like
Mhm.
I'm very visionary, very like, oh, and my business partner, my husband, he's very much like, we have a deadline.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, oh, my bad. Deadlines? What are those? Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's like, and even when I started in financial services, same thing. My operations manager, completely opposite of me, but I knew that from an early age because I saw people trying to do the same thing with they basically hired themselves. So yeah, such great points you made. So, you know, for you and in the industry, why are remote good faith exams so critical to the future of aesthetics? Because I know we have like GLP-1s now, we have hormone therapy, where everyone's talking about
Yeah.
holistic wellness now. This is the next wave, right? And they don't even want to call filler anymore. They want to call it gels.
Yeah.
So so with all this new stuff coming in, how much more important are GFEs?
Mm. Well, I like this question. They are extremely important for anyone who's wanting to add in. They're important already for aesthetics, but especially if you are wanting to add in any wellness services. So, everything you just mentioned peptides, hormone replacement, weight loss, anything that we're getting into now, more of a holistic approach for this patient, right? You're going to be getting patients naturally that are going to have more comorbidities, probably more of a past medical history. And so there really is a missed opportunity here if we're not doing a full good faith exam, going over their full health history, not just something that's going to be relevant to Botox. And there's a couple reasons. One is that if you get a patient a good faith exam before they come in and it's comprehensive, the great part about that is that if I'm the provider and you're Leslie, you're the patient, you're coming in and you've already done your good faith exam and you're coming in for your first appointment with me. Now I actually already have this beautiful picture of your whole health history. And so I can actually start to, in my mind, craft, okay, what do I think this patient needs? Right? I know what she wants. I know some of her history. I can already start to craft up what I would want to devise for your treatment plan, but it might give me more insight into some of your struggles that we can solve with peptides or hormones, even if that's not what you're coming in for, right? But it's super important because everything affects everything else. So it's important to know our patient's history. And I think that, again, that's just a missed opportunity that I see often. So for that reason, incredibly important to be getting these comprehensive good faith exams done for every single one of your patients every 12 months, or if anything changes in their health history. But secondly, there's also a missed opportunity that I see often with clients who come to us where they might have an NP or an MD on site or a PA who's doing the good faith exams for all of their patients. And what I like to lay out for them is that, look, you might be able to make this work and that's working for you right now, but what you don't see is the missed revenue opportunity to put this, let's call it a nurse practitioner back into the room with a patient in the chair doing billable treatments. So if they're doing good faith exams for an hour of a day, how much more revenue could they be generating in that hour if they're actually doing treatments versus doing these good faith exams, which it's not a billable service for the most part, although I encourage people to charge their patients for this. But a lot of our clients generally take that cost on. And so then you have this situation where you're essentially, paying this NP to do for an hour of their time and missing out on potentially 3, 4x, that time in terms of revenue.
Yeah.
So that's a picture that I see more and more people going, oh, okay, I get it. More and more people are starting to become more literate with finances in terms of, from 2011 to now, the med spa industry has grown so much. Now we have fantastic, software. We have, fractional CFOs. We have so many resources for people to really understand their finances. And so people can start to go, oh, okay, I grasp this concept. I pay this nurse practitioner per hour and I can have them generating X amount of dollars. The average revenue per hour is anywhere between, the low end 500, at the high end, 1200. That's a lot more revenue that you're making when you multiply that on 1 hour a day, 4 or 5 days a week. And so that's where it starts to really make sense for people.
Yeah, and I also think another thing with that, and I'm sure, it's just the convenience for the patient. It's like instead of going in, what if I'm not a good candidate and I never had filler before or I have something going on? It's better to catch this in advance so that I don't have to waste my time driving 20, 25 minutes, maybe 10, even 10 minutes. Who cares? It's still a waste of time. I could sit at my house, talk to this nurse, talk about all my concerns, and they're going to uncover all these things in that instead of me going in and then maybe not even be able to get service the same day. Like,
Yeah. That would be I would call that a poor customer experience, which you definitely don't want to, if it's your first time, having that patient come in, you definitely don't want to start off on that foot if they've driven there and then end up not being able to do the service. So you're right. The convenience factor for the patient and the provider is a big one as well.
yeah. And so, like, with that too, it's just like, what do you think most practice owners misunderstand about compliance and telehealth? Like, across the country, what do you see? They just don't understand it. They're just getting it wrong.
Yeah. I see a lot of people they have hesitancy around how is this going to work with telehealth if they haven't used it in their practice. It's really mainstream, but still for aesthetics, it's still people are getting used to how do we actually utilize this in our practice? Is this going to be able to exemplify our brand? How they get a little bit hesitant about who is this person on the call with my patient and how do I make sure that they're representing my brand the way that I want them to, right? So it's a lot about building trust with them and getting them to understand that the process that we take on is really a white glove service. So we make sure that we are representing the clients each time we pick up a call with their patient. The other part too is compliance in general is very confusing.
Yeah.
It changes all the time,
State to state.
all the time. And from state to state, it's different. So we get compliance questions a lot, and I always say, I'm not an attorney, but I can just tell you what I know and what I've been through. And so we do offer up a lot of, I call them customer stories, or you can call them case studies, where people in different states I've seen be investigated for different reasons and why and what happened. So offering up a lot of insight in that way is helpful for our clients or prospective clients, because I think a lot of them do come to us not knowing even what the regulations are or where to find them or what trusted sources they should be looking at. So I think all of those things combined is really what I see the most in terms of, people's hesitancy and perhaps just not understanding compliance as a whole.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing. Because I mean, most people aren't starting out, even if they've been in business for 5, 6 years, they
Mhm.
still I don't see many compliance officers work in the practices. I have a few practices where they actually have a compliance officer who that's their
Mhm.
job to get in there, but, like, how many of them actually have someone on retainer, even a lawyer to
No.
understand those
Yeah.
things? Not many. They're just kind of flying by the seat of their pants and saying, "Oh, we know we can have a medical director. We know we can do this. We know we can inject." And that's where it stops many times, that compliance
Yeah.
conversation, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing, you just said something really interesting, is that most people don't have what you would consider a compliance officer. And what's interesting about this industry is when you open a med spa, there's actually no regulating body. There's no real license that you need to get to operate a med spa to check the box and say, hey, I'm doing everything correctly. Much like when you open a restaurant, you've got to get all these inspections and health department, blah, blah, blah. So this doesn't happen in our industry. And so what ends up happening is that you can be in operation and what you think you're operating compliantly because you haven't heard from any agency or a regulating body, right? But it's not until you get that investigation. And that's actually not a bad thing. I don't like to scare people into it. The more you grow and the more exposure you have, the more likely that at some point you'll have an investigation. So you want to be prepared for that. And that's really when people find out, unfortunately, for the first time that they're not compliant. The majority of the investigations that I see are people who actually didn't know that they weren't compliant, right? There are some who are doing things that they know aren't right and they're hoping they can get away with it. But there definitely are people, and oftentimes, depending on the state, it's a matter of, okay, you need to pay a fine. You need to submit your documentation, make these changes. So it's not, it's not going to close your business down. But it depends on what the investigation is about and what they find. So I just think having somebody do an audit. So if you can't have a compliance officer, that's a very costly position for someone who's just running a single location practice. But do an audit. There are people out there that do compliance audits that will come in, look at your whole business structure, make sure that you have all the documentation on site, everything is correct for your state. Okay, so if you just went on ChatGPT and try to get a bunch of SOPs and contracts for your state, not good enough. Every state is different. So please, if you take one thing away from this, don't do that. That's it. There are people that do that, and it's super important because it's a cost up front that some business owners don't want to take. But I will tell you, it will cost you in the long run a lot less if you just upfront do this audit or hire someone on a consulting basis to set you up appropriately, make sure you're compliant, than to have to go through an investigation and then hire an attorney and then close your business for 5, 6, 7, 10 days, right? All of that ends up costing you way more than if you just did it right up front.
Yes. And for those of you listening, you really, if you want to be a business owner, you got to play the game, right? And the game is to do things correctly because like you said, Paulina, the bigger you get, the more eyes, and also other nurses and other doctors are going to want to take you down because people are petty. Like I have seen it with my clients. Other people are calling the board on them because they think it's a good idea, because they want them to have an investigation. They don't want the competition. So you always have to remember that there are petty people out there who will do this to you. No one's immune, right? No one's immune. So it's better to be prepared in advance and think of it as an investment for your business.
Yes.
Instead of buying a new Chanel purse or an Hermes bag or whatever, please don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Invest in the things that actually are going to build a solid foundation, right?
And longevity, because what you want is longevity.
Exactly. And now kind of going back into your journey. So that's Spkinect and everything. And so with that, kind of going back into your journey as a founder, what do you think has been your hardest decision that you've had to make as a founder? And how did that change how you think about that type of situation going forward?
That is such a good question. Okay, the hardest decision, truthfully, is the first time that I had to lay someone off. The decision that brought me to realizing that that was what I had to do. I tried, first of all, I really liked this person. And I tried to find another position within the company. And we're small, and we were even smaller at the time. So several years ago. I tried to find another position for them, and it wasn't right. It didn't work out. So that was already a mistake that I, look back on now. But I had put them in a different position that I said, okay, I want to make this work. We'll make this position sort of for you that I think is right for your skill set. But it wasn't quite what the business needed at the time. And at the end of the day, the business wasn't benefiting and this person was not benefiting either because they weren't really able to perform at the level they needed to. And so I had to let this person go. And that's really for me just sat with me, and it was hard. It was really hard because I felt like it was my fault. I felt like I had let this person down. That was the first time I felt that I had really, made a mistake as a business owner. And now, when you're running a business and it's just you and your husband, there's not as much at stake. You start to have employees who show up every day and their livelihoods depend on this business running and having a job. You do feel a lot more responsible. So what I will say is that moment really changed how I hire, how I think about organizational structure in the company, how I think about functions and roles, when we need to add one, when do we not? And if we do, what are the functions of this role? If you can't list in 4 or 5 just bullet points, high level, what is this person going to be doing? You probably don't need them. You need to be able to explicitly state those things. And once you do that exercise, then you kind of go, yeah, there's either some redundancy or maybe this is not a role that we need right now. Maybe we can get someone in a consulting fashion, or maybe we can do something that makes more sense for the business at that time. So I will say that was my biggest lesson in hiring, and it came from just never wanting to have that conversation again. You never want to have to lay somebody off. It's not great. It's hard for morale. It's all over a hard thing. Nobody wants to do that. So as much as you can to avoid it on the front end, and you do that by not hiring unless you absolutely have to. And you make sure that if you're hiring, you have a very clear and well-defined role, what this person is responsible for, what they're accountable for, what lies with them, and then bring them on.
That's gold right there. I think that's the end of the podcast, guys. No, like, seriously, because it's like I've seen this in so many practices. It's like someone is growing, they decide to hire a friend, and then the person's not performing to the way that they want them to. And I'm like, did you even like define what a good
Yes.
job is?
Yes.
And they're like, no, but I just told them not doing a good job. Like, that's not fair to anybody, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, if you understand this is the job, like you said,
Yes.
these are the functions of this job. These are the KPIs that we're going to
Yes.
track objectively. Doesn't
Yeah.
care about feelings to say that you did a good job or you did it. You either meet it or you don't.
Yep.
Forever.
Yeah.
That's huge. And so I do see, especially with small businesses, because at the end of the day, it's a small business. All of our businesses are small businesses. 5 to 20, 30 employees, that's considered a small business, right?
Yes.
And it's just like, it's very personal every hire. It's every personal, any layoff that we do. And it, like you said, it does affect people. So like you said, I would encourage everyone, if you haven't had that conversation and you are having those challenges, before you go ahead and say, I'm laying this person off, go back, list what the functions of that role is. Have a meeting with that person and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I did not lay out what a good job in this role is, but we're
Yes.
doing that now. So I'm
Yeah.
going to give you an opportunity because I think you can do it to
Yeah.
rise to this level. Give them a trial of 90 days. And if they're not, and also train them, obviously, this is something they need to be trained on. And if they're not performing, then even if it's a friend, it's better to let go a relationship than to keep something in your business that's not working, because the business is an entity on its own, despite what you feel. And I think that's
Yes.
something that people don't understand. Like, oh, my feelings don't pay the bills.
Yeah. That's true. And I like what you said too about taking accountability. So if, let's say you're in a situation, you're listening right now and you're like, okay, I have a similar situation and I haven't set clear expectations for the role. When you do that, make sure you say, I didn't do this well enough. This is on me, right? I didn't define this for you. You never want to jump in and blame the other person if you haven't set clear expectations. You want to jump in and say, I didn't make this very clear and I realize that. So this is going to help both of us to really understand how do you know when you've done a good job, right? And how do I know that the business is getting what we need out of this role? And that's really what it comes down to. It's like you said, it's not personal.
I know, it's not personal. And then, kind of so where do you find or where do you think that your company is headed in the next 3 to 5 years? And, like, what would you say excites you the most about the future?
Yeah. Well, there's obviously so much interest in the med spa industry in the last 2 years. We've just absolutely exploded. So there's a lot of ideas, a lot of things that we have sort of in the hopper right now that are brewing. We are releasing our new platform actually at the end of this month. So all of our clients are going to be accessing Spkinect on a brand new platform, which has been in the works for about 2 years now. So this is very exciting for us, but there's a lot of opportunity. And I will say from a business standpoint, what I always strive for is longevity. We've been in business for 13 years. I intend for us to be in business in another 13 years. And it's actually really hard for me to look that far ahead and say, what do I think the industry is going to look like? And what do I think Spa Connect is going to be doing? I think the one thing that has really kept us in business as long is that we can adapt and we can adapt quickly. And that's something that you really can only do if you're small and nimble. And so my intent is that we stay as small and lean as possible, be efficient, be powerful, make exciting things, but continue to stay agile because this industry just moves and shifts all the time. So I also like to have work-life balance. So I have, a young child at home, and this company is also my other baby, my life. But I want to have time with her. So I do run the company in a way that is sustainable. I definitely, we grow year over year consistently. We're growing, but I don't really have aspirations to say, like, okay, I want to, grow this and then sell. This is really what I've built my life around, and I enjoy it. And I love the life that we've built. And so for me, in 3 to 5 years, I want to continue doing that. I want to continue hiring more mothers who work from home. We are primarily female workforce. So we get a lot of women who either are postpartum, they want to stay home, be around their kids more. They don't want to have to go back into their clinic. And so that's what brings me joy.
I love that. And that's such a great value to have, just like respecting the journey of motherhood, because there's so many
Mhm.
corporations that don't respect that, and it's like that's another skill set in itself, and it's like it's something that I think in our country we need more of, mothers who wanna be like who want a mother, who want a mom,
And
and
you
mom
know what?
hard.
Working moms, I mean, the moms that work with us, they are some of the hardest working, most efficient people, and I really look at it because moms, especially working moms, I mean, you have to juggle so much mental load, there's so much going on, especially if you have multiple kids, you have multiple activities, there is just constantly a laundry list that we are going through all the time to keep everything moving, that they are very efficient in their work. They show up and you want to work and then check out so that you can go be with family. So I do find that they have been very fruitful for us, and I enjoy working with them as well. It's personally very satisfying.
I love that so much,
Yeah.
and 'cause, we're both doing my team's remote too, for the most part or whatever, and so I love that people can have the time to do what they need to do. So
Yes,
that's
because
great.
that's how I want to live my life too. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
and it comes down to values, right? It's just
Mhm.
like not everyone's values are the same. We have Jamie Dimon who's swearing at his employees saying, "You need to be in the office," la,
Yeah.
la, la," like, and then you have other people that are like, as long as you get your work done, like we're good. Like,
Right.
because there's other ways to build culture
Yes.
beyond just being together. Yes, do you have some osmosis of behaviors when you're in the same vicinity of other people? Of course. However, I think if you talked about going back to what you said before, if you understand what it takes to get the role done and you put in proper expectations for everything, and I think it can work too.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love that. And, is the last thing I'll ask you, if you could whisper one thing to, a new aesthetic provider or even someone who's been in business for a while, but one thing, what would you whisper
Oh,
to
okay.
them?
I love this. Okay. I have to whisper. It's a little bit of, there's a story here, but I'll tell you. Okay. There is a company called AG1. You may have heard of it. Okay. Their CEO is female. Her name is Kat Cole. She's incredible. Anyways, one thing that she taught me is at the end of every week on Friday, ask yourself, if there was a really hot shot CEO in my seat right now, someone you admire, think about someone you look up to, right? If they were in my seat today, what decision would they make to make this business better? Because I find likely most of us know what needs to be done, but we're either afraid or putting it off or procrastinating. So when you put yourself out of the picture and you think of it in the third person and you think, okay, if somebody else was in this seat, what would they do? The answer becomes very clear. All of a sudden you go, well, they would do this. And that's what you need to do. And if you ask yourself that question every week, you'll get marginally better every week because you'll start forcing yourself to make decisions that you otherwise just wouldn't do.
Get still snap for that.
Powerful.
I'll snap for that. Wow, this has been so great. Thank you for sharing this time with us today, Paulina. And guys, so for Spkinect, if you do not have good faith exams in your practice remotely, this is your sign to go get that shit done, girl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Call us.
I don't know if she swears, but I do. So
Good. I'm glad we can swear because I think I already let some go already.
I know, look, I do. But yeah, so that's so awesome. So I'm going to, guys, as usually I do, I'm going to link everything about Spkinect in the show notes. And if she has any other resources, we'll link that there too. But again, Paulina, thank you so much for your insights, your wisdom, and sharing that with our audience today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Want more clarity like this? Join the Branded Practice newsletter community. I write about strategy, systems, and brand leadership straight to your inbox. Go to diamondhandsmedia.com to sign up. And if this episode hit, share it with someone still building without a brand. This is the Diamond Hands Podcast. Thanks for listening. Now go lead.